Alright. Alright, ideally all of you will have looked at the verbatim manual and gone through the tutorial, but since most of the people on this team are super lazy, I figured I might as well make this video, show you the basics of how to use verbatim 5.0 myself. So first, assuming you've installed verbatim, I go to my verbatim shortcut and open it. Okay, so now I have verbatim. So what verbatim is fundamentally is it's a template for Microsoft Word. That means that it has a specific structure that the people who made verbatim have made to, in order for it to be more useful for debate, whether that's through formatting files or using files in a round. So one of the first things you'll notice about verbatim is it has this new debate ribbon here, which is specific macros that they've added to your basic Word interface so that all the commands you need to be more successful at debate are right at your fingertips. So you see here I can choose what windows I want. There's various commands. There's a built-in timer for speech, a built-in timer for speech times, and for some reason they've decided to put this on college time. So I'm just going to reformat it really quickly. Yeah, awesome. So what we have here is our timer. Most of the time I don't really use the verbatim timer for anything besides timing prep, since it's actually pretty efficient at doing that. So yeah, biggest benefit of verbatim is this section right here, the formatting section, which is where the actual template part of verbatim comes in, which is when I hit particular functions like the pocket button right here, or F4 if you want to use the macro, which you probably should. It's a lot more efficient. It actually gives me a formatting of the file that's really useful for debate related things. So what we have first is the pocket, and that's the title of your file. So as you can see, I've already put the file title, yeah, really creative, up on this. So let's say if this was awesome F, that's where the title would go. And yeah, the next subsection is the hat, or F5, and that's like your more broad-based section, I guess. That's the best way I know how to describe that. So most of the time when you see it in files, it's used to title really broad-based sections, such as the 1AC or like your 1AC, your 2AC back file blocks or answers to off case. It's called the it's called a hat because back in the days of paper debate, what you do was you'd have your expando where all your files went, but in order to differentiate between like broad sections of a particular file that's in your expando, what you do is you'd fold a piece of paper in half, write the title of that section on the piece of paper, then you'd literally place that paper over a section of papers of your file that you'd want to differentiate from your other files. So it would literally be like a hat on top of your cards to differentiate them, but that's kind of beside the point. So I have my awesome sections, and next I'll go to the next level of the next hierarchy level, which is the block. So the block is your next subheading after your pocket. Ideally, a block would be a group of files that you just read them in one chunk during your speech. So like that's why it's a block, because it's like a block of cards on a particular subject that go into your speech. Good example would be, let me pull up some files here to show you. So as you can see right here, this is a file that was created by the Georgetown debate camp for their starter app. It's part of the MA370 app that's in open evidence. So if you look at the navigation toolbar, this is where the biggest advantage of verbatim comes from. It's because each section is really carefully delineated. When you're actually looking for a particular subject, when you're looking for a particular subject, it makes it really easy to find what you're looking for, since the formatting of the file itself is on the navigation pane, and each formatting, like each level of the hierarchy, is so carefully delineated that it's really easy to find. So if I want answers to T military, for example, I can just go down to the block they have, like right here, and this is where all my cards on T military would be. So this is the 2AC frontline, and that's just another way to refer to the first block. As you can see, this is F6 formatted. It's a block, so ideally in a round I just have to highlight this entire section, and then I'd be able to read it all in one go, and it would answer. The purpose of a block is like it would answer most of the common arguments that are brought up against it. There's also backlines here that would give you more specific answers depending on what the other side reads. So like this is a really big advantage to the verbatim formatting. It just makes everything a lot easier to find. So this is a good example of the block. So back to verbatim organization. The next part that's really used, the next part of the hierarchy is the tag. So the tag is the title of the card, so to speak. It's like, it's the claim of the card, I should say that. So it's basically, it's basically what you would read in a round and like what the card would claim. And you hit F7 to put your specific card. And of course I'd want to cite the card. So for example, if I want to cut a particular thing, I would, so let's say I want to cut some evidence for my awesome card. So what I do is I would, all of this is included in the how to research video that I also put out, so I'm not going to go into a lot of specifics on how this process works. But when you're pasting in evidence, once again, it's really important to hit F2 instead of Control V, and also to hit F3 to get rid of all the line spacings you had. Back to my organization and macros thing, F8 for citations is also really important. Because it makes the citation, the actual citation you read in the round, stand out a lot more, so you don't have to go hunting around your full site looking for the important bits. So when we actually look at the card proper, another really useful bit about verbatim is that it gives you really quick and efficient ways to highlight and underline. For example, if you highlight a particular section and hit F9, it'll just automatically underline it for you. And then if you hit F11, it'll highlight it for you. But a way more efficient way to do that is if you use the underline mode key or button, because if you highlight it there, it just automatically underlines it for you. You don't have to hit any buttons or mess around with that sort of stuff. And yeah, you just turn it off by clicking on it again. And also the highlight button has the exact same functionality. You just highlight something and it automatically highlights for you. It's really useful and efficient. Then your final step would be to shrink the ununderlined text so it's easier to read the actual important stuff in a round. So that's just Control 8, and what it does is it makes all the ununderlined text in size 8 font. So that's a lot easier to deal with. So yeah, that's your basic, that's like your really quick overview of how to format with verbatim. Another really cool part about verbatim is that, another really cool part of, before I do that, so like if you need to make new documents while you're researching stuff, you just hit the new thing and like it gives you a new document that's in the verbatim format. So because if you just hit Control N like I do right here, it gives you a new document that's just in your basic normal Word template, and like that doesn't have all the cool functionalities. that I just did that. So that's why you hit the new key. You can also have the same effect if you just click your verbatim shortcut again. So yeah, really important thing to remember right there. Another really cool part about verbatim is this particular button, the verbatimise button. What it does is that it takes a document that's in the normal Word template and it changes it over to the verbatim template. So as you can see right here, this file was made in the normal Word format. So there's nothing cool on the navigation pane here. So when I want to find stuff, it's like really hard to find what I want. So that's why I hit the verbatimize button. Okay, well, that didn't exactly work out, so I'll have to look at it later, but yeah, well, as you see, I've loaded the verbatim on this particular document. So assuming that the verbatimizing process was successful, you'll now have the debate ribbon and all the verbatim related formats on to your document. So then what you can do is you can just format all the particular points on this document. So I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but as you can see now, all my points are on the navigation pane, and it's just generally a lot more easier to handle. Alright, so now that we've talked about file formatting, I'm going to go over how verbatim makes paperless debating so much more easier. So I have my AF blocks, my 2AC blocks file open, and I want to make my 2AC. So obviously this big file is really hard to handle since I'm not going to be reading the entire file in the round. So what I do is I hit this speech button . Okay, maybe that wasn't the best idea. So what I do is I hit the speech button and my speech comes up. So I title my speech, and then I have to pick somewhere to save it. Ideally, how you'd save your speeches is you'd make a dedicated speech folder within your team folder, and you just save all your speeches into there. Since this is just a sample one, I'm not actually going to do that. So I'll just save to desktop for now. But I have my speech pulled up. So then what I do is I go back to this particular file, and so I'm going to want to have answers to everything the 1NC reads. So I'm going to title it, well, on case should go first, but I'm going to title it my particular sections, on case, off case. So then my blocks will be against the particular arguments that were read. So I go back to my file and let's see, T, what do I read for T? So I have a 2AC frontline already prepped. So what I do is this particular command, the send to speech command, that what it does is it sends the entire section, so that would be everything that's underneath this block section. It sends that entire section to the speech doc, or you can do that with tilde, because tilde does the same thing. So if I go to my speech doc, the entire section is now here. So that makes things a lot easier, because instead of having to hurriedly copy and paste between docs, I just hit tilde, and that's a lot more efficient, saves a lot of time. So what do I do if I don't want to just read the entire block? So if I don't want to read the entire section, what I do is I pull up the file and I go to specific section. So I just want the price part. So I click the section I want. In this case, I click which hierarchy level I want to send to my speech doc. In this case, it's the card level. So I click that and then I hit tilde. And then, I want deficit spending goods. So I click the hierarchy level I want to send and I hit tilde. Again, hierarchy level, tilde. So now if we look at the speech doc, the cards that I actually want are now in that level, are now on my speech doc. So I don't have to, so I'm not bound to reading just that entire block that I don't really have to read. So that's how it works. So when I go up to get my 2AC, all I need to do is give this speech doc, just read straight down on the speech doc, and it'll be a lot easier. And also another way to make things a lot easier to read is reading mode. So when I shift into reading mode, all I get is I get it a lot bigger. So now it's just a lot easier to read, since literally all I have to do is read what's on the screen. Now finally, what I need to do is I need to flash the speech over. So a lot of people, when they're flashing speech over, they go to File, Save As, find the flash drive, and that takes a lot of time. But what's cool about verbatim is it has this USB button here. Well, it's not picking up my flash drive right now. I'll have to look at that too. But ideally, when you hit the USB button, it'll just automatically save to your USB drive. So, saves time. So yeah, that's basically your bare bones guide to how to use verbatim.